Hi, hello everyone, and Happy New Year. This is Dr. Judith Briles, the Book Shepherd, and we are ready to go. We're going to do video forward for the year 2025. And as we start each of our shows, I always like to remind people you're going to get ahas and tips and strategies and all kinds of goodies for your book success. And today we're talking book marketing. So I always love to lead with a quote from my book, my little book. How to Create Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. And today is if you are dreaming of book marketing success, you will fail. Guaranteed. If you're planning it and getting up each day, taking one more step toward your goal, you will succeed. I have 400 of these babies in this little gem that I put together over oh my God, 3 decades of publishing. With me is the awesome Brian Feinblum, who is with us. Brian's been with me before, and it's been too long since we've had him back, but he is brilliant, and he is acknowledged by from winningwriters.com, from bookbaby.com, and he has got the ultimate book marketing blog, and you can find it at bookmarketingbuzzblog.com. And I'm just going to recommend to all of you just write that down, bookmarketingbuzzblog.com, and get your tush over when we're done and sign up so you get his regular blogs because they're really priceless, they're timely, and they will add to your planning and success. So I've known Brian since I started publishing years ago when he used to be with another publicity company and actually handled some of my own stuff when I first got started. But he's also worked with some lightweights like Stephen Covey and Ken Blanchard and John Maxwell and Henry Winkler and someone I follow every day, Seth Golden. So with that said, we're just going to jump into it. So welcome, Brian, to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Nice to see you again.
I know it's kind of fun to kick it off and get it going again.
Absolutely. New
All
year,
right.
new
I,
marketing.
I I know. So, Brian, I always like to look at yesteryears. It was only 2 days ago, when we tape this, and Brian, is going to be kicking this off. It will be the second week of January when we make the show go live. But what I'd like, and everyone, I broke my wrist, so it's been surgery, and so that comes off in February. So I'm kind of excited. But that I always like to look at what some of the boo-boos you saw people doing last year.
Oh my.
Hmm?
How much
Yeah,
time?
I mean, there's always a lot, right?
Well, I think the most common mistakes most authors make, even some of the bigger ones,
Hmm.
is first one's, I guess, attitude or expectation, meaning
Mhm.
finally confronting that you're the person, you, the author, are the one
Uh-huh.
responsible for your marketing. You have to take ownership of it. You have to
Yep.
realize, especially if you don't have a publisher, but even if you do have a publisher, they don't always do a lot for you. They don't do as much as you'd hope. And
Mhm.
they don't have the same interests at heart. You would think your publisher and an author would be aligned, but they're not. The
No.
publisher's strict goal is to sell books with as minimal effort and expense as possible. And at a minimum, not to lose money, and of course, where possible, to make money. The
Mhm.
author is trying to sell books, but they're also trying to establish their brand and their writing career. And sometimes a book may be more than just a sales product. They want their
Mhm.
voice heard. And so usually publishers move on fast from one book to the next. Authors, this is your baby, and you stick with it for as long as you can. For self-published authors, which is the majority of people that I work with now, they're the ones in need, and they are the majority of publishing. Of all the books being published throughout the year, about 80 or 85% come from self-published authors, and a small percentage come from traditional publishers.
Mhm.
So, what mistakes do they make? Not to avoid your question. One is taking ownership. Two is deciding, okay, what will I, the author, do? What will I outsource for help? Meaning, will they hire a marketer or a publicist or someone to help in some aspect? And the third thing is to let things go, meaning you have to accept the fact that if you can't do it and you can't afford to hire someone to do something, it simply won't get done. And what I'm saying is don't feel guilty. you know, I think authors are always, when I talk to them, they say, I should be doing this and I have to do that. And I know I should be doing this. It's like talking about a diet. I know I shouldn't be eating that. I really shouldn't have that piece of cake. I should be in the gym. And I think the best thing to do is to confront it and then accept what you can do and what you can't do. So the
Yeah,
mistake, like,
so wise. And I have to kiss on something that you said about publishers, because you and I met when I was with publishers. 18 of my now 47 books were with the big boys.
yeah,
And that the kind of the window they gave was like 6 weeks. They give your book 6 weeks to
yes,
see if it can get some traction, all that. And then the Velcro entered our, our vocabulary, and it was what got thrown up on the wall that would stick
right.
and not slide off. And now I'm seeing publishers, if they're going to do anything, and that's the big word is if, because the only thing I see the publishers doing is for the big boys. They're
Hmm.
mainstream people now. And that if you're going to sell books, it's going to be up to the author, and they better embrace that thing. And it goes back to your number one, it's your attitude and your expectations. But
Absolutely.
I, but now what I see publishers is if they are going to do a newbie author, they give them a couple of weeks to see if the Velcro comes up. Otherwise, it's called next.
Right.
So yeah, your first thing, attitude and expectations is the essential to me. Really the essential
A
to
hundred
be
percent.
realistic. You're not going to sell a million books. And the other line I wanted to throw out and give to all our authors for the new year is don't call yourself a self-published author. You are honored to be published by an independent press that specializes in your books. That's you. Okay. And you don't have to say what it is, or you can give the name, and it's not going to be your name. It's not going to be John Smith Books. But come up with a realistic and just let it go and move on. And Brian, I found that 99.9% of the time people accept that and they don't go any further. So take my line and steal it and use it, people.
I was reading a book about the history of book publishing recently.
Hmm,
What I found to be interesting was only in this short window of time, the last 100 years, 50 years, was it the norm to be published by a publisher, to be paid by a publisher and published by
yeah.
a publisher. Most authors, from the beginning of publishing, and now as you see where we're heading in the last few years, authors paid to get published. Even some big name people, famous people that you didn't expect.
Yes.
It was the norm, not because there was something wrong with the book. It's just how the publishing industry was founded. It was always a an entrepreneurial enterprise, and it's
Ah, so the pendulum has come back.
yes, exactly. This is actually the norm in some ways. I guess what's not norm is how many books are being published. There are so many books out there. The numbers are mind-boggling. I keep seeing different numbers, but something like 2.6 million books were published last year, of which about 400,000 or 450,000 came from traditional publishers. So the rest are people, ordinary people writing their stories. A lot of my authors and clients, many of them write memoirs, many of them have historical fiction, science fiction, thrillers. There's a ton of fiction out there, as well as self-help books, inspirational, romance. You got it. All kinds of books out there, but they all
I-
need
I-
some sort of push.
So is there any trend in for the independent as indie authors now? Because I crossed the bridge in 2000. I and
So,
it was only yeah, it was only because I had a call from a client who was speaks now, who said they wanted a few books and could I arrange it? And I said with the publisher, and I had just taken back the rights. And I said, well, I'm sure I could. And I said, if I could get a third off, would that work for you? And they said, oh, that would be great. Well, their few books, which were only 60 was the remaining stock. Their few books, Brian, was they wanted to start with 1,000 books. And that was a gulp,
mhm.
gulp. Can I do this? So me and the plant in the corner had a talk, and we made that decision that yep, we're going to do that. And that was my leap. That was the and I've never looked back.
Good.
Never have I looked back that and regretted it.
Hmm.
And I came from being a kept author, and now I'm keeping myself. So it's a big decision, but when you throw that 2.6 million books published in 2024 and only 450,000 titles, I do you have any stats on what the average what the average sales of a book is? I mean, everyone says it's going to be a million. Look at you're lucky if five people sell a million books in a year of those big boys and girls.
Absolutely. Well, that's true. People keep thinking that so many books are sold by the best-selling authors. You can make a bestseller list and only sell a few thousand copies. I
Mhm.
mean, so think about Amazon. Let's just say a traditional bestsellers like the
Mhm.
New York Times bestseller list or something major like that.
Mhm.
Publishers Weekly has a bestseller list, and I look at it every week, and it shows you how many books were sold. And sometimes once you get to the 10th or 15th book on the list, depending on the genre, 3,000, 4,000 copies could get you on the bestseller list. So when people hear someone's a best-selling author, it doesn't mean that they're selling a million copies. In fact, as you pointed out, only a handful sell a million copies or more in any given year. I don't know what
Mhm.
the average sales unit is for traditionally published, but for self-published, there have been a number of studies done, and one I saw recently said more than 80% of self-published books on average sell don't break 100 copies in sales. Now, the reason for that is manyfold. One, of course, is market.
Right.
Many authors fail to market at all or market well. The second reason would be is that some of the books maybe lack distribution. So just because you published a book, how is it being sold? For instance, many authors know to go to Amazon. They usually start out with Amazon if they do it on their own. But the next step, in my opinion, is to go to something like Ingram Spark, which gets you distribution into bookstores and other areas, or you use a self-publisher, hybrid publisher, if you find one that you like. So distribution is important. Pricing is important. Some authors, although the trend is to price the ebook very low, sometimes $2, $3, $4, but usually you'll see a paperback or a hardcover is way overpriced because the author has so many expenses, and they sort of factor that into the pricing of the book. But
Yes.
the consumer doesn't price that into their pricing. They're like, if I can get this other book that looks just as
Yeah.
good for $5 less or $10 less, I'm going to buy the other book. So
I am so glad you brought that up because they do. Well, it cost me this much to
yes.
bring this book forward. Nonsense. You have to do this is marketing people, your competitive analysis. What is your genre going for? What are the people saying? If your book is going at 1995 in your genre, if the norm right now for a new
Right.
book, I'll tell you to go to 24 and 23 and see what your genre is for these people. And I've seen for the first time, Brian, the fantasy books,
Mm-hmm.
which are, big
Yes.
tomes, a
Yes.
lot of these, they have been running around 1895 or so. I mean, the cost of printing now is so horrible for the indie, if you're doing it a POD,
Yes.
that now I'm seeing all of a sudden a jump from the big boys too into the 20s now, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. So adjust your prices. This is what's cool about the independent market. You can increase your prices and bring it up to norm, but you got to sell your book for what the norm is, and that's same for ebooks. You've got to go in and look at, I think it's nuts to go below 299,
Right.
where if you go below 299 or over 999, you're only going to get 35 for 35% of what that book is. All right, with that said, Brian, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back, everyone.
Well,
It's Brian Feinblum and an amazing author forward this year. Okay, um, Ben, are you patching in our commercials?
Yes, and that was something we were going to need to talk about on the call after this.
Okay, so I can just go 3, 2, 1, and you can patch it together and we'll keep going.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, we're back with Brian Feinblum, and I want to remind you, make sure you get on his bookmarketingbuzzblog.com. You can also follow him on LinkedIn at brianfeinblum.com and on Facebook. So, with that said, we're talking these strategies going forward for this year for you as the primary bookseller of all time. And by the way, book sales were up last year, everybody. Book sales were up last year because of us. self and independent people, and all that. But if there's 2.6 million books published in 2024, how are you going to rise above the cloud? Right, that's what we want to get into, Brian. So
And
take us, take us to the moon.
we'd love to. And just to correct the website, it's
Oh,
bookmarketingbuzzblog.blogspot.com.
oh,
I know
oh,
it's a
oh,
long title.
so sorry. Sorry. Okay. Book marketing
Buzz
buzz blog
dot
dot
blog.
blogspot.com.
Awesome.
Right.
And there's
Right.
lots
So
of good advice in there. So
yeah,
feel
there's always tons of good advice. This is
free.
one of the ones I read. Okay. So, all right. So let's
What's
go
what?
forward now. So we've kind of done a revamp. We've got there's a lot of voices out here, a
Mhm.
lot of noise, and we want to know how to be heard.
So one is to set obviously some of the quick basics, have a marketing plan, right? Whatever you're going to put into that plan, have a
Hmm.
plan.
Hmm.
Try to plan early. Many authors will do it in reverse. They're about to publish a book, and then they're like, "Oh, what should I do?" Well,
Yeah.
it's time to do something, or maybe I'll finish do my website before the book is out. Um, it's the other way around, right? You have to really think ahead of time. And I realize authors are always at different stages, but if you're an author that's writing more than one book, for the next book that's coming out, try
Hmm.
and plan ahead. So, what's a reasonable time frame? Certainly for all authors, I recommend having a website. There's still authors that I come about that
I
say,
know.
why do I need a website? I've got a Facebook page and a this and a that. You want a website because that's your home, that's your real estate to advertise and promote yourself. You're the one that owns that content. You're the one who can update that content. Facebook, for instance, is just one platform. So if I'm not on Facebook, let's say I'm on X and I'm on everything else but Facebook, and you tell me go check out my Facebook page, I'm not going to check it out because I'm not on Facebook. So a website is neutral, whether someone is on X or LinkedIn or Instagram or Pinterest. They could always, everyone, all of us, as long as we have a computer and fingers or audio operated, we can get onto we can get onto a website. Put your crutch on there. Um,
Yes. Mm.
so having a website, I think, is important. Does not have to have bells and whistles. You don't have to spend a ton of money, but a website must exist with key stuff. What is the book about? Why would one be interested in buying that book? Your content has to reflect that. Everyone as a consumer has questions. Well, what's so interesting? What's so special about this book or this person? Figure out a way to answer that on your website. Give them a sample of your writing content so they could see would they like what's in the book. Give them information about yourself so they can be impressed with your background, whatever it may be. If you have professional credentials that somehow correlate with what you're writing about, even if it's fiction, then great. And if you don't, then just let them know who you are as a person. Perhaps there's something they'll find that's likable about you that they could feel connected to you. You know, many authors even put in their bios they have a dog or they like this, they like that, because many of us do like dogs and do like certain things. And I know I feel a little bit warmer when someone says they're a dog lover. Um,
I know you have two rescue dogs.
that's right. That's right. Love them. So having a website is key. Being on social media, I recommend that authors be on at least one social media platform that they do well, and they could have a secondary one. After that, I don't know that you get the full benefit for the time that authors feel they have to put into social media. Now, many of us, including myself, have more than two platforms, but the truth is I'm really most active on one of them, which for me is LinkedIn, and secondarily Facebook, because that just works best for me in terms of how I interact with authors. But if you're an author trying to find your reader, I still highly recommend, I mean, it depends on the type of book, but I highly recommend Facebook. It's still the biggest platform. It tends to meet a lot of demographics of people who buy books.
Mhm.
That said, if you're a visual person or a visual book, let's say it's a fitness book, right? You're a 25-year-old, good-looking
Yep.
person and has photography, or you travel the world and you have images, or you're a chef and you have food, then you're on Instagram. Anything visual is more Instagram oriented. If you favor making videos, you might be on TikTok for however long TikTok will be around for, right?
Yeah.
So X is probably more if you really want to be in the playground of people yelling at each other and uh, politics and things of that nature. So each platform has its own pros and cons, but I highly recommend that an author get be proficient on at least one of them, where that means they're posting consistently. if they're on Facebook, they're joining groups. They're doing certain things to proactively get followers and connections, and not just post haphazardly and hope that someone discovers something. There
Oh,
are strategies than
and
that.
this,
Yes,
yeah, and this is where I'm going to go back to your number two when we started at the top of the hour.
yes,
That, what will I do and what will I outsource?
yes.
Okay, so this is and this is where I actually have two VAs that work for me. At it and every day new stuff goes up. They make posters, they make stuff, they go on all the channels, they monitor, they do things. Last month I did well, it ended this month, but I started the 12 days of Christmas where I did a giveaway.
Mhm.
And I'm going to loop this back to the website, why you must have a website.
Mhm.
It's neutral, but you own it. You're
Right.
in control of it. And your website is to collect names. This
Mhm.
is where your fans build on and all that, called the magic. To me, the gold is emails, having emails. So, like when you send me something, it's coming to me through email. I'm
Mhm.
getting it through email.
Mhm.
And that we have thousands and thousands and thousands of names on our email that I can send out. Every Tuesday my blog goes out to everybody. Every Wednesday my newsletter goes out to everybody. Every Thursday we send out an e-blast on like our show will go out to my
Right.
entire email list on and let them know you can listen to it on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Amazon. We just let them know where they can go find it on
Absolutely.
that. I think that's marketing. Um,
100%. And you mentioned about ownership of the content is very
mhm.
important. And because it's your website, you should put content on. If you don't have a blog, put on what I call articles. Write up a 500-word piece on something that's related to the topic of what you write about or of your background, and you use that on social media. In other words, if you go on Facebook or anywhere else, ideally, I'd love to take a piece of content from my website, if one has a website, take a piece of that content and share the link to that content on Facebook. By doing that, in my opinion, you're getting people to not only get good content, but you get into your site. They'll click on the link, they'll be on your site, they'll see that you have books. How many times can you post on Facebook, I've got a new book, go buy it, or I just got a great review, check out my book, or I just won an award. I mean, those are fine once here and there, but after that, you have to give people some reason to tune in, something of substance, something of interest, something that might just make them laugh, whatever it may be that you can connect with somebody. You want them to get to your site because once they're at your site, such as in your case, you have so many books. So
Yeah.
you almost don't care what they purchase. As long as they're on your site, they're going to see, they're going to become
Mhm.
a connection for you. Um,
Well, I'm really tuning into it. So I started creating like each month.
mhm,
Like this is January is Book Blitz month. I mean, I had every month. I have the book ban month, and every day we created. Now that I did this for a whole year, now I can recycle. Or my favorite word, repurpose. I can just
mhm,
put them out again, but they're just a quote. It could be a quote from me, could be a quote from Stephen King about writing. It
mhm,
could be something about the joy of reading. It could be about celebrating librarians or libraries, but just a quote, something to chew on a little bit, or something that is fun or juicy, or who knows. But I think I quoted Margaret Atwood a couple of times last month. But I try to create a variety of different things. And I think that what's really important for all of our authors and or authors to be is that it's not always about your book. It's about you too,
mhm.
about what your passion and what inspires you, what keeps you going, what brings you joy, and the ahas. And I think those are good to share too. And for the dog lovers, there's Wolf Wednesday. You should remember Wolf Wednesday. You have something or a favorite quote with your pooch.
I
Be
love
creative here. Be creative here.
it.
Okay. So
Those
credentials. Yeah, I think I stopped writing at credentials and then I got absorbed in what you were saying.
no worries. So we're saying how an author should have a website, some
Hmm.
social media. Look, the big areas for an author are number one, well, no set order, but number one, book awards and writing contests, right? Authors should think about, can I submit my book to different awards and different contests? And the answer is yes. There are dozens of reasonably decent and legitimate book awards out there. There are different levels, right? At the top, Pulitzer Prize for, and a Nobel Prize for literature. We're not talking about that, but we're not talking about completely useless awards either. There's a middle ground. There's some solid. In fact, I'm a judge now for one of them, the Independent Book Publishers Association, the IBPA. They have their own book awards every year. And so for the first time, I'm experiencing what it's like to be a judge. I'm always telling authors, go ahead and submit. And I realized the judges have a pretty tough time. I've gotten dozens of books and you have to read them all and really weigh them and evaluate them. But I realized that, the way the categories are set up, everyone has some sort of chance. It's not like I got thousands of books. I got maybe 40 books in my category that were sent to me, and there were a few other judges. So depending on your genre, you may only be competing with a few dozen authors or even a few hundred versus thousands and millions of books. For as many books that are put out there every year, there are
I
only
know.
actually know which awards to apply to, when to apply, and to have the courage or resources to actually go ahead and submit it. Some authors, even if they know which awards to apply to, they get intimidated or nervous. Is my book really that good? Or, am I worthy of this? The answer is yes. Put it in there, go for it. You have nothing to lose. You only lose when you don't try. I know there are many quotes like that, but it's true.
Hmm.
Don't attempt something, and it's a lost opportunity. It's as if you failed. It's the same thing. It's the same as if you try and fall short, it's the same as not trying,
Hmm.
meaning you have to try to put yourself in a position for success. And with marketing, you have to have a thick skin. So whatever you do, if you text,
Yeah.
right, if you text 100 people and get no
Thick
responses,
skin.
thick skin, don't give up. If you submit
Yeah.
to awards and don't hear from anybody, don't give up. But so book awards is a big area, social media, news media overall. So anything from traditional media, radio, TV, print, but also online, being interviewed on other people's podcasts, uh, guest posting on other people's blogs, other websites that interview and review books. Book reviews are major. So let's talk about book reviews for a second. Authors need to know, if they don't know yet, many book review outlets, if they accept books like yours, meaning on your genre, or if they're self-published or whatever format they're in, they want them about 4 months before a book comes out. So as an example, Publishers Weekly, major traditional book review publication, been around 150 years. They want you to send the book or a galley, advanced review copy of some form about four
Hmm.
months before the book's out. If you send it 2.5 months before it's out, it goes in the garbage. You send it a month before, in the garbage. It's already too old for them. They work way in advance. So one is just respecting schedules and boundaries of what the book reviewers want. If you miss those deadlines, you can't do anything about it, except the next step would be to look at paid book reviews, which really makes sense anyway. When I first started out in publishing, working for several book publishers as well as a PR agency, we'd send out tons of galleys and arcs and whatever they were called to,
Parks. Yeah.
yes, interview copy.
Advanced read. That's an advanced reader copy, people. That's what they were called then.
And publishers back then missed deadlines too. I remember a publisher I worked for said, "Oh, just change the publication date. No one's going to know." Just back then, it wasn't as tight as it is today. I mean, now you just go online, everything you can see when something was published and copyrighted and what have you. Um, but anyway, if you miss the deadlines, the paid book reviews to me make sense. So Publishers Weekly, the magazine I just mentioned, they also have a paid version for people who miss deadlines or simply because Publishers Weekly can only handle so many books for review. So if they get thousands of books per week being sent to them and they review, let's say 200 in a given week or fewer, obviously a lot don't get reviewed. So they offer the paid option where they then hire extra staff to review books for a fee. And it's worth it. It's worth doing these paid reviews because if you get a positive review, you could eventually put it on your Amazon page, your website, your social media, your press release, the back of your next book cover, or even your current book cover. You have different opportunities online to change things and revise your cover. So getting those reviews is important. When you want to talk to a bookstore, a library, or anywhere else, they love to hear that they're third-party validators, book reviewers, major
Hmm.
endorsements possible, whatever book awards. So it's very important to get book reviews and to get a bunch of them, not to go bankrupt doing it, but to get some. So have a budget for book reviews for sure. The next big area would be speaking
Do you,
engagement.
do you want to do you want to mention a couple of the ones that are, in your opinion, legit for paid book reviews?
Sure, there's a whole bunch. So I guess at the highest level, I'd say would be Kirkus Reviews,
Hmm.
Posters Weekly, and Clarion Forward Magazine. So those are the big three as far as traditional print magazines that, of course, have online versions, and they've been around 50 or more years. Kirkus would be the top, Posters Weekly would be second closest, and Forward would be third.
All right, so Forward is Clarion, by the way, everyone. Kirkus is Kirkus, and Publishers Weekly is Book Life. Is that not right?
That's right, correct. It's still the
Book
same
Life.
publication, but it's called Book Life, Posters Weekly Book Life.
Yeah, but the editor is the same for both. I just want you all to
Right.
know.
That's right.
Yeah,
The next
yeah.
step, I would say, in terms of digital only, Indie Reader, Book Trib, and Book Readsy. Those are, to me, the bigger three. And then there are smaller ones, but not insignificant ones, like a Midwest Book Review or Blue Ink. What's the other one?
Hmm.
US Book Review. There's a whole bunch of them. There's a few dozen. If you just Google paid book
Hmm.
reviews, I've over the years put together a pretty good list of these, but you could still find a bunch of them. Generally,
Hmm.
so the question would be budgeting. The bigger print ones are around $350, $400. Kirkus is about 400. The bigger digital ones are around 300, like Indie Reader and Reedsy. And then the other ones, usually around $150 or less. Midwest Book Review is only $50. That one I highly recommend.
Actually, it's free. Midwest is
Well,
free.
it's the same thing as Posters Weekly. You could submit for free. If you don't get it, they have
Hmm.
a paid option for $50. Yes.
Mm. Okay. So also, Blue Ink, which I'm fond of, is one of our sponsors.
Hmm.
Blue Ink and Clarion, which is the Forward magazine, often will do a package
Hmm.
deal that you can kick them both. They are, and I will say that they are well respected by the library. If your book's a library book, I would move those guys to the top of the list.
Hmm.
And what I can say about, I'm very fond of Jim Cox at Midwest.
Yes.
Um, and they have eight channels that they go out to from Midwest that they will redirect to other areas that they do. So they're a kick. Um, so I'm fond of them
Great.
on that. And there's also um, one of the you pay for it. I think it's Literary Titan, not much money, like $50 or something. Literary Titan. If they really like your book, they actually have the Literary Titan Book Awards.
Very
They
good.
will automatically enter your book into their book awards.
Mhm.
Very cool. So,
I agree. Good point.
mhm.
So let's
All
see.
right.
So book reviews. Next area I'd say it's important. Well, giveaways. So book giveaways. Many authors are going to give their books away for one reason or another. Um, then I support that. The easiest way is to do it digitally where it's free, as far as you don't have to ship any books or print any books. But even giveaways sometimes aren't free. If you do a book giveaway with someone like Goodreads, there's a small fee. If you do something
Mhm.
with library thing, there's a small fee. But there are lots of good free book giveaway sites that are worth going after. Um, and in general, just having the mentality of knowing you have to give books away. Why do you give books away? To get word of mouth, to get people to post social media posts or reviews, to get them to if you have 10 books and you give one away, you're hoping that they'll buy the other 9 books if they like the first book. So there's
Mhm.
lots of reasons to give a book away. And this may be true with your website, especially for you, Judith. I'm sure at times you've thought about giving, maybe you already do. Do you give a book away on your site where people can download a book for free?
They can download different things. I actually, last year I built a separate website just for my books because
Mm,
the Book Shepherd website had everything in there. And then I created Judith Briles
mhm.
books.com. And I give an entire cookbook away because I cook. So, and that was kind of a freebie. But I did, and you haven't kissed on contest. I did in, let's see, a September banned book week. Isn't that a banned book week?
Yeah,
Yeah, in the last month of September.
yes.
I did a banned book week, and I actually physically the grand prize, and I just randomly picked 12 banned books. One was at Wood's Handmail Table, one was Carrie's by Stephen King, but I went into banned books
Mm,
and I actually physically, the grand prize winner got 12 physical books.
no.
And then I had five runner-ups, and I gave them a copy of my author's walk, which is the book I wish to God someone had put in my hand when I started writing 40 years ago. Right? And it's not how to publish, it's how to keep your mojo going.
Nice.
It,
Very,
it was that.
very
Yeah,
important.
it's a great little gem of a book. And I gave that to five of the winners. Now, the site I used to run that off of was King Sumo, which is a crazy, my God, they have crazy stuff on that site. But King Sumo,
Mhm.
and I actually upgraded it for my 12 Days of Christmas giveaway, where I was giving away the digital copies because it did cost me several $100s to
Mhm.
do the banned book contest. But I will tell you, I picked up everybody over 500 new emails from that.
Excellent.
Okay, and that's, your emails are your gold, everyone. That's your gold. And in this particular one, I'm giving away all five of my publishing books, all five, the full digital copies. And they will go out on January. They went out on January 7th to the participants in that the 12 winners for
Mhm.
each day. So,
Excellent. That's the way to do it. You have to build up your mailing list constantly, constantly.
yeah.
But that's another important point. Marketing doesn't just begin and end, it's a constant. You may change what you're doing, and at times maybe you do more versus less, but you're always doing something. So it's that
Hmm.
marketing mindset. You have to be opportunistic, leads me to the next point. Direct marketing, which is a kind of a loose term, but direct marketing is important for authors. Now, I don't necessarily mean that you're doing what a corporation would do for direct marketing, where they're telemarketing and they're sending you thousands of postcards and the like. But think of your market. This goes back to earlier in the conversation. Who is your reader? Who are you trying to market to? That's another big mistake that authors make. They believe or think anyone or everyone could be reading their book, and it's simply not true. It's your reader is going to be, a small fraction of the country. Even a book that you think should have broad appeal. Let's say you wrote a book about losing weight. Even that, it's only going to appeal to people who have to lose weight. Then it has to be people who think that they have to lose weight, and then it's people who are willing to do something about it and will actually buy a book. So many books, especially if you're writing a memoir or a certain kind of genre fiction, you may think, okay, maybe there's 20 million people that could buy my book, which is a nice number, but still, that's already less than 10% of the country. And it's probably not 20 million. As we said, books sell in the hundreds or in the thousands. So you want to go to your most likely places to find your reader, but you have to know who your reader is. So think about realistically, what kind of person would read your book? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Older, younger, educated, money, certain part of the country? What kind of books would that other person be reading? And start to see a pattern of, okay, I could probably find my reader in these kind of groups, or I can, if I approach people in these cities, that's more likely. Sometimes books, it's very obvious. If a book has a very targeted readership, if it's geared towards, Asian people, if it's geared towards women, if it's geared towards people who are seniors, then okay, the theme of the book already tells you, the book is for a certain kind of person. But most often it's not that obvious, and you have to just give it a little more thought as to who really is the type of reader for my book and who has the discretionary income to buy my book. Um, So finding your reader and then marketing to them. And a lot of that can be done online with social media. And that's why it's so important for authors not to poo-poo social media. The other problem that authors have, I think, is that when they outsource social media, if they outsource it, mean they hire someone to post 3 or 4 times a week for them and do certain things for them, they don't realize that person may not be proactively finding more connections. Meaning, when you post something, that's good. That's at least a minimum of what you should be doing. But are you proactively finding your readers? Are they going to where your potential reader is? Are they seeking them out online? Are they searching for people who say that they have certain interests? Are they searching for groups that have members that say they like science fiction books or whatever the genre may be? If they're not, then you're not fully getting the most out of what you can with social media. We're so eager to post and to create content, which is important. But the third part is finding someone to actually read that content, finding someone that you want to be in front of to get that message out there. I think that that's really important. And that's the most important. So direct marketing, that can come with your speaking engagements. Should I be speaking at a church because my book appeals to those kind of people? Should it be at a library? Should it be at a bookstore? Should it be a certain nonprofit or business or college campus? Where should I be going to try and promote my book? Where do my readers exist? So that's really important. And authors have to be honest with themselves as to who is a likely reader and who is not. The next key area I think, is advertising. And that area is to be cautious. I usually don't suggest that authors spend much on advertising. For instance, if you're an author, if it's your first or second book, and if it's fiction especially, advertising won't really pay for itself as far as if you spend $1,000, will you get 1,001 back? No, absolutely not. Not to my experience with fiction. Will you sell $200 or $300 worth of books if you spend 1,000? Maybe. So then the question is, was it worth it? Well, if you're trying to establish your brand or get people to just discover who you are, maybe you do have to spend some money and take a loss to get some readers. But if you're doing it purely based on profitability, I think most advertising, Google ads, Facebook ads, Amazon ads, do not pay off unless it's the ideal situation. Now, an ideal situation might be your situation, Judith. You have so many books. So,
Mhm.
and there's a theme to a lot of the books or connective tissue to your books. Um, so,
Mhm.
right? So categorically, there's a number of books that are connected to each other. So if you advertise one as a loss leader, you spend 1,000, only get $300 of sales initially. But those people that read your book, if they like it, they may then see, well, what else did Judith write? Let me go to her site. They may become clients of yours, which is worth a lot more than a book. They
Yeah.
may buy other books. That'll turn your ad from being a loss leader into a winner. So for you, that can make sense. If you're an author who has fiction and you have a series of 6 books all connected, so if you advertise one, taking initially a loss, but they like the book, they will buy the other books. Eventually, you will see something from this. So there are reasons to advertise, but for most people, if you're starting out, if you have 3 or fewer books, and especially if the books aren't connected to each other, or it's not if it's nonfiction, then maybe it's worth doing an ad. People who do ads that tell me they love them are usually people who have side businesses. They wrote a book about legal advice, and they're lawyers. So if they get even one person to buy the book who becomes a client, the ad more than paid for itself.
Huge. It's huge.
Right. But for fiction, um, your
It's
main
readers.
it's readers, right? So
Yeah.
so I think people have to be cautious with ads. Every time I talk to an author, say, "Oh yeah, I stuck out an ad in this magazine, or I did an
Oh, I know.
online," and you know, authors want discoverability. They want to believe that their book is really good and that someone's going to discover them. And you do have to push for discoverability, but you have to do the right things. And I think advertising is not the smartest way initially. You want to be more pure. Social media, speaking, media, book reviews, word of mouth, that sort of thing. I'll say this though, the type of advertising I like are those book deal of the day sites like BookBub and Bargain Booksy. There's a whole bunch of these sites, and then they have other advertising programs. But the one thing that they do well is where they'll lower the price of your ebook for one day So let's say normally a book is $6.99 as an ebook. They may encourage you to lower the book to 99 cents, $1.99, $2.99, as long as it's been lowered significantly. They'll promote your book for a day to a certain portion of their subscribers. And just based off the numbers, the sheer numbers, most authors will sell at least a few hundred books when they do something like this. They may have to pay anywhere from $200 to $400 to do a promotion like this, and they could break even or make money depending on what the book costs them and what they priced it at. But more importantly, they'll get a lot of readers. They will get people to discover their book that way.
Mhm.
So that
You
kind
know,
of
yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned Bargain Booksy. As I'm a fan of
mhm.
Bargain Booksy, but I'm also a huge fan of Free Booksy,
Yes.
of paying
Yes.
for that. And when I'm doing Amazon bestseller campaigns with my
Mhm.
clients, that we typically get when we do a Free Booksy, and that when and you select, just like you select the target market, whether it's children's or fantasy or sci-fi or thriller, suspense or mystery, or just general nonfiction. And
Mhm.
I'd like to, before we leave today, let's talk about, there's just so many things people can do with nonfiction. And nonfiction has always been easier in some promotion, but boy, there's huge things you can do with fiction too. But it's going back to, I wrote down the who. It's always about the who, where you're going to in those directions. When we do our campaigns, and we actually do them over a couple of days, but the Bargain Booksy and Free Booksy are 1 day shots.
Mhm.
And you're talking about, anywhere from 120 down to maybe $65 to jump in on these things, to open up your eyes to maybe 100,000
Mhm.
people who are identified in those genres. You need to understand this, everybody. This is very who specific. And typically when we do a program, we see at least 3,000 plus downloads, Brian.
Awesome.
3,000. And our clients nailed down the bestseller status across the board for
Mhm.
multiple days. So
Mhm.
now we're a bestseller on Amazon, but it also opens up you in other things. And this is where we haven't mentioned the word super fan at all during our hour together, but this is where you start building those super fans who become your advocates, and they actually
That's
become
right.
marketing partners. They start doing a shout out for you. So and so has a new book. I mean, that is the author dream, I think.
Sure. Sure.
So,
100%. So I mean, that has to do that. So what's interesting about that, eventually the quality of the book, the writing of your
mhm,
book
mhm,
is what's going to create that super fan. So most people put out a book and they feel like, well, if if you just magically market the book, it'll sell, word of mouth and whatever. But what really gets a book to sell is the quality of the book. Initially, the quality of the book actually doesn't matter, meaning if you're talking about your book on social media or you're speaking somewhere, you could say whatever you want that may, and I'm not saying you should lie, but I'm saying you can
mhm,
say whatever you want, present well, and people will be lured into buying your book,
mhm.
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So you do your
Because
best.
they connect with you, because they connect with
That's
you.
right. They believe in
Yeah.
you. It sounds interesting. Then they read
Yeah.
the book and they're like, "Whoa, this is awful." So if they find the book's awful, obviously there won't be any word of mouth, or it might be negative word of
Mhm,
mouth, and that's the
mhm,
end of the book.
mhm,
I guess what I'm trying to say, my point is, many authors will say, my book is really great. People just have to read it and they'll really love it. And it may be true, but how do you get them to first read it? You need a certain number of people, the first few hundred, the first few thousand people, whether free, paid, or otherwise, to read your book. If a certain percentage of those people like the book, they will become your super fans. They will start to advocate for you or highlight that the book is great. So you do need a great book, but not initially to market the book. Eventually, for
mhm,
success to actually last, yes, the book should be very good. And that's why you need that validation. You need those reviews. You need awards. You need someone or something to say this book is really good. Even getting testimonials. Many authors I speak to, they're shy about seeking out
oh,
endorsements and
yeah.
testimonials, people that they know or could know. You should get everything you can. It's all about reputation marketing.
It,
Just
it, it
want to
it
say it's
is.
good.
And it's hard. And people will say, oh, yeah, I'll put a review up. They
Mhm.
don't.
Right.
You know, you got to ask and ask and ask. And one of the tips I will leave our people with. We have like 7 minutes or so here, Brian.
Sure.
But that I tell people I have a slip, and I'm now writing a fiction series, historical fiction series.
Hmm.
And you've got to come up with a punchy line that will stop people and think, well, wait a minute, I'll chew on this a little bit to get their attention. I do a lot of work with Barnes and Noble. I'm in
Hmm.
their stores a lot signing books. I never sell. I never leave a Barnes and Noble store without selling 30 to 40 of my books at a crack. Now, the book signing business is tough
Hmm.
in stores. The
Sure.
average author, I groan with them because they sit
Mhm.
quietly waiting for them. No, no, you are not sitting quietly. You're in an act, and you've got to come up with some lines to get their attention.
Hmm.
And I would always ask people, do you like historical fiction? Do you like women's fiction? And if they say yes, and I just say, can I tell you about my book? And usually it's a yes. And I said, well, if you're interested into a badass female protagonist that can take down 4 men in 1 minute with a bow and arrow, this is the book you might want to start with. It's the 11th century. All right. So a conversation starts, and that's what you want to do something. I mean, something
Absolutely.
like that. Something that fits for you that can roll off your mouth easily. And it could be quirky, it could be funny, it could be outrageous, it could be mind startling, anything like that. But you've got to pick up. This is marketing 101. To
You need.
get their connection and connect and will satisfy their need. And we haven't used the word pain,
Hmm.
Brian,
Hmm.
but we authors are problem solvers. We are problem solvers. For fiction, you're just giving them escapism and a great story to
Hmm.
go into in a field that they're after. If it's nonfiction, they're looking for very specific stuff. And
Right.
Brian, you've worked for some big people,
Hmm.
big people. And when you put together those campaigns, what were you noodling for?
Well, it's
When,
interesting. Even when you're working with people who may already be established, best-selling authors or famous people, they're still competing with other best-selling authors and other famous people,
in the
even
same genre.
in the same genre. So if you're contacting a hard-to-get media outlet, whether it's USA Today, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, or Good Morning America, and that type of thing,
Mhm.
you do have to have a hook. You do have to still say why should you be interviewing this person for the fifth time, or for the first time in some
Yeah,
cases. So
yeah.
their problem is more overexposure, or
Mhm.
that there's nothing new. They may not have anything really new to say, but they still have such a past history that that
Mhm.
that you want to promote. So what I learned from working with some of the bigger people, obviously their demands are higher, right? They want bigger media outlets, or if you get a great publication, they want the cover, not just an article. They want this or that. So meeting those demands could always be tough. But what I've learned in promoting the bigger people is that one is the first thing, the easiest part that they help you with is the credentials. When you're an unknown author, you're trying to establish why should the media outlet listen to this author versus that author. So when one has some sort of credential to back them up, it makes it a lot easier, right? If I'm able to say I have Grammy winner so and so or multi best-selling author, at least they're listening, they're open to the conversation. So authors, even when you feel you're not as established as a Henry Winkler or someone like that I've worked with, lead with your best credential. What would be your best accomplishment as a writer, or what's most interesting about you that pertains to your topic? For instance, I love authors where their background ties into their subject matter. If it's a thriller and it's written by a former police officer, then there's something realistic about the book, or
Oh,
people assume there's something realistic, that the police officer is really telling you some case that he worked on, even though he's not saying that that's the case. So the media likes that as well. They like people that they assume have some sort of credential or background to what they write. So I think that's
oh,
very
we're
important.
having internet looks like, yeah. All right. Well, that's exciting. Hey, Brian, I want to thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for being with us today. And I think we need to do this far more often.
my pleasure. Happy to come back.
All right. So everyone, Brian Feinblum, you will find him at bookmarketingbuzzblog.blogspot.com. That's bookmarketingbuzzblog.blogspot.com. And you
Thank
can also go to his website, which
you.
I'm going to assume is your name, Brian. Is that correct?
Well, so it's the blog. Everyone
Oh,
follows
it is your
me.
blog.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. All right.
yes. I find it to be the easiest way. My contact info is there, and then I get into conversations with people one-on-one about their books, which is most important.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you again, Brian. We will do this definitely again. Maybe we should do this like a quarterly thing or something. Just bring it back in and we go back in and okay, so what's hot? What's going forward? One last tidbit you want to share with everyone to march forward through 2025?
Yes, just do it. Just like the Nike commercial says,
Do
just do
it.
it. Don't
Yes.
overthink it. Don't overthink it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't look at your bank account. Just go and do something to market your book.
Oh, okay, everyone. Thanks again. It's
All right.
Author You, your guide to book publishing. We're on the podcast. You can find us on all the popular channels. And for audio, certainly there. And then we'll be on my YouTube station. And we will be getting there. So take care. Happy book selling. Happy author success.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care. 3, 2, 1.